Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel News Weekly Rebel Roundup. Used to just be every single day we would get together and we talk about it, but well, there's a lot of news out in the world, and we didn't want to take our regular host at the time, David Menzies, off the Man on the Street beat. I think that's where he's best. So we've condensed the show to just on Fridays. We'll talk about the news of the week together, and I really do mean together. So I'm your host, Sheila Gunn-Reid. I'm the editor-in-chief here at Rebel News. And when I say together, I do mean that because the show is interactive. So if you're watching us right now on YouTube, thank you for toughing it out over there at the censorship platform of YouTube. But there are many ways where you can have your say. So maybe mosey on over to a less censorious platform like Rumble or Odyssey. And on those platforms, on Rumble, you can leave a paid chat called a Rumble Rant. On Odyssey, it's called a Hyper Chat. You can also watch us, as I said, on YouTube or Getter. But on Rumble and Odyssey, you can leave a paid chat. If your paid chat is over the $5 US cutoff, I am obligating myself to read your chat on air. But don't let the $5 be the bar for entry, because sometimes we read free chats. Sometimes we read chats that are far less than $5. And also, isn't it fun to talk to other people? You can talk to other people in the live stream chat, the live chat there. It's fun to see the regulars making friends with other regulars there. I frequently go back and read what you think about the work that we do here at Rebel News, because without you, there is no Rebel News, which is why we rely on those paid chats. We'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau. And how could we ever hold him to account if we did? I mean, you can see that in all the mainstream media coverage of Justin Trudeau. Often it resembles a cover letter for a resume or a grant application, just the constant sucking up to not just Justin Trudeau, but all levels of government, because they have a failing business model. Okay, enough slagging on my peers, I suppose, in the mainstream media. No, not enough. Sorry, I'm wrong. I'm going to do it right now. Our operations manager brought this clip up in our morning meeting today, and he suffers. He truly does suffer for Rebel News, not just because we are a herd of cats and we're hard to manage, and we have an interesting way of doing business. You know, we rely on your donations. It's an honest way of doing business, but it can be a difficult and unpredictable way of doing business. And he also watched CBC's At Issue panel so that we didn't have to. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Operations Manager. And he pointed out this crazy, crazy video from Andrew Coyne, who is a member of Justin Trudeau's extended family. And he says we should take in more migrants because we're a rich country and we have lots of room.
Do you feel like we're a rich country these days? I mean, if you're Andrew Coyne and you are part of the bailout media and you also have a gig at CBC agreeing with other CBC panelists, and I'll get to that in a second. Of course, you might feel that this is a rich country because you don't live in reality like everybody else does. Anyway, let's show this. Andrew Coyne, member of Justin Trudeau's extended family. Let's show that clip. What a surly looking bunch, by the way.
Point, really get to the root of the question, which is, can we take more people in? And if they're coming without us planning, how do we prepare for that? What should we be doing?
Yeah, well, we can take more, and I would support taking more. I think we can afford to be a generous country, and it's always proven to be our benefit in the long run. But yes, the federal government has responsibility for the borders. I would like to see a high level of immigration, a high level of intake of refugees, but therefore we got to set aside the funding to resource it.
It's like I asked AI to generate an image of 4 excessively boring upper middle class people, right? That's a real feast for the eyes. It's exactly what a CBC ad issue panel would look like. And if you've ever watched these ad issue panels, if you want to suffer like our operations manager, it's not a vigorous panel like what you would expect. Like you would put together a panel and some people are conservatives and some people are liberals, and there's a differing viewpoint on certain issues, which is a reflection of Canada, which is what CBC is supposed to be. But no, it's literally all the same. It's completely homogenous. They're just a bunch of champagne liberals agreeing with each other. And nobody on that panel would have disagreed with Andrew Coyne. Not a single one. I can't. Chantal Hebert. She probably agreed if I had to guess. Did she? Let's roll it. Do we have the audio? I'm curious. Okay, she'll, you know what, it doesn't matter. But the point of all of this is I'm slagging on CBC. But Andrew Coyne, as I said, is a member of Justin Trudeau's extended family. He is part of the media elite in this country, although you probably don't read him or care about what he has to say. I mean, he's on the CBC. No, nobody watches the CBC. But he writes for Post Media, which is, I think, one of the largest, if not the largest, non-CBC bailout recipient. And then he has appearances on CBC. He doesn't say anything controversial as far as the liberal agenda goes. And so he's a well-kept sort of member of Canada's social class. So do you think that he has to deal with the impacts of out of control immigration, like what he would like to see for the rest of us? Do you think that he has to worry about, am I ever going to be able to afford a home? Do you think he has to worry about food inflation or wait lines at a hospital because we have an increased healthcare capacity along with the size of the population? Do you think that he has to deal with a homeless encampment in his neighborhood because of the social fallout related to increased immigration that drives people out of jobs? If jobs don't keep up to immigration, it drives people out of houses. If houses don't keep up with immigration, like, do you think he has to deal with all of those things? Or is he a low liability advice giver? Because it's easy for him to say, yeah, let's just let her rip. Just shoot a fire hose of migrants into this country and let us drink it all down. Of course he can say that because he doesn't have to deal with it. So he's a low liability advice giver. If he doesn't really have skin in the game here, right? I know Olivia found Chantal Hebert's comments. Is it on the same topic? Doesn't even matter. Okay, let's just hear what she had to say.
I am not convinced that this debate, the way that it is being framed, is going to do any good, but I am convinced that it will do harm to the image of asylum seekers, many of whom are not here for the wrong reasons, and their kids, with the Quebec government now deciding that it shouldn't be forced to offer daycare to people who actually have a work permit and are seeking asylum in this country. It's a debate that is not being handled on either side on an adult basis.
Well, let me just end on
Okay,
that
I think
point
that's
about the
good. I think that's good. So she fundamentally agrees with Andrew Coyne. We need more asylum seekers. We need more refugees. We need more migrants. And if you disagree, then you are not handling the debate like an adult. For example, right now in Quebec, they're saying we cannot provide our coveted Alberta subsidized daycare program to people who only have a work permit. It has to be for citizens of Quebec and not illegal migrants. And because they can't afford it. And as an Albertan, I can't afford to continue giving money to Quebec to give out daycare subsidies that we would never in our wildest dreams be able to afford in Alberta. And Quebec wisely is saying, no, we have to limit this to the people who are here. And so if you say that, if you talk about the fiscal reality of unfettered migration, wherever you fall down on the issue of migration, but if you talk about the fiscal strains of unfettered migration, well, you're not being a grown-up, according to these completely milquetoast panelists who just sit there and nod at each other. Like they don't even have a discussion. They just are like, yep, thumbs up, Andrew. Okay, cool, Chantal. Like, could we even have remotely a reflection of the rest of this country? Or is it just, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal talking to each other and agreeing with each other all the time on the CBC? I guess I'll have to watch more to find out. Anyway, let's keep moving ahead. Speaking of somebody who's completely out of whack with what the majority of this country wants, yes, I'm talking about our fearless leader, Justin Trudeau. He is reintroducing the online harms bill. And they are saying, the Liberals are saying that this is necessary to protect kids online, but there are already laws that protect kids online. And what are your kids doing online if you don't know about it? Like, this is the parent's job. And, previous iterations of this bill, and same with this one, because it's still on the Liberal website that says that this will protect Canadians against online hate, whatever that means, and Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, terrorism online. Again, there are rules against hate speech, and that includes online. There are rules about incitement, actual laws about incitement to terrorism. They exist. So what is the purpose of the online harms bill? Well, they're selling it as a poison pill, right? They're saying, oh, it's got all these provisions to protect children in it. So if you vote it down, if you vote down this censorship legislation, is what it really will be, then you don't care about kids. It's actually a clever thing that the Liberals have done, but also deeply sinister, that they're standing on the backs of exploited kids to censor the rest of us. Trudeau, however, is saying that Poilievre's opposition to censoring Canadians online is irresponsible and not serious. Could you imagine? Like Trudeau calling somebody unserious? But here we go. Let's show this clip.
There was a question about online harms that people are asking about. And I think I was talking about this with my MPs earlier. The reality is, I think everyone agrees how incredibly important it is to keep kids safe. We keep kids safe in the schoolyard. We keep kids safe in our communities. We need to do a better job as a society keeping kids safe online. Keeping them safe from child sexual exploitation, from bullying, from the kinds of mental health distress that far too many of our young people are going through. And that's why we're moving forward with online harms legislation that will be introduced soon in the House and that will be robustly debated. Because I think it's something that all Canadians count on, that governments do what they need to keep all of our kids safe. Now, the fact that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, without reading the legislation, without knowing what's in the legislation, are not just opposing it, but spreading lies about it, is concerning. What's also concerning is, instead of stepping up to stand for protecting our kids through responsible, serious legislation, he's proposing that adults should instead have to give their ID and their personal information to sketchy websites, or create a digital ID for adults to be able to browse the web where they want to. That's something that we stand against and disagree with. We think we need to responsibly protect kids, but we need to do it in a way that is acceptable to all Canadians. So I think this is yet another example of Pierre Poilievre being irresponsible and not serious, and choosing to play politics instead of actually focusing on what matters, which is how to keep our kids safe.
So I should tell you that we do have a pretty good idea of what is in the online harms bill, because it was first proposed in 2021 and it died. I think it was Bill C-36. It died when the Liberals called the last election. So thankfully they weren't able to push it through. But boy, did they ever want to censor the internet in advance of the next election. And he listed things there like child abuse. There are laws against abusing kids, capturing images of abusing kids, sharing images of abusing kids, exploitation of children online. We have laws against that. And it's funny that he is going to bat here for users of, we're going to get censored here, so I don't want to say the word, but people who use certain websites to access certain images and videos. I think you know what I'm beating around the bush here about, but YouTube doesn't like you to say that word. And he is defending people who don't want to prove that they are over 18 to access those websites, that they would have to provide their ID to sketchy websites. Well, then don't consume that if you don't trust the website that you're using. And by the way, if they're sketchy websites, why are we hosting them in Canada? Because oftentimes they are, you know, hosting images that are illegal, involve exploitation, et cetera, but Justin Trudeau is going to ensure your right to consume that when you're 17, I guess. And censoring the rest of us because he listed off protecting kids, and that those laws are already in place. And I want to tell you how serious the Liberals are about doing this, because, I should also note, in the first version of this bill, which, you know, as Justin Trudeau has become more radical over the years, his legislation has risen in radicalization as well. The first iteration of the bill, they wanted to ensure that there were fines for social media companies who did not comply with the government's censorship demands. If the government said that things were harmful and the website or social media company said, no, that's just online debate, it's just fair criticism, if you didn't comply, they were going to fine the social media company. And the government has just announced that there will be like a special regulator now for the internet, above and beyond all the other regulators of the internet and internet practices that they're bringing in, expanding the role of the CRTC with the Online Streaming Act. They want a specific regulator to deal with just the internet, and a special ombudsman to deal with complaints from the public, I suppose, about other public, you know, like the ombudsman of mean tweets, I guess. I'm going to make sure that they are having that guy work overtime with my Twitter account. And they are serious, because I got an email this morning saying that the Justice Minister was just now named the Minister of Online Harms. It says, Her Excellency, it's an order in council So they expanded the role of the justice minister on the 19th quietly, but the email came out today that under the recommendation of the prime minister under section 11 of the Ministries and Ministers Act, it assigns the Honorable Arif Virani, Minister of State for Online Harms, to be styled Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada to assist the Minister of Canadian Heritage in carrying out that of the minister's responsibilities. So this bill, this piece of legislation is going to be so big and so censorious. And they wanted, of course, in advance of the next election to shut you up because you're harming them online, that they've already created a special minister to help administer it. So that's a thing. Oh, Olivia, I'm very sorry. I forgot to read these chats from last week. So they came in after I signed off last week. And last week was our special birthday stream. And I couldn't go late that day. I signed off right away. And it is to my great regret that I couldn't go late because you guys were very generous after the fact. And I just want to make sure that I acknowledge those chats and those donations. So Beazle 37 says, gives us $5 and says, please go and point out Jason Kenney's insane hypocrisy. So I was talking about last week how Jason Kenney would be speaking with my MP, Garnet Jennis, at a global religious persecution conference. The gall of Mr. Pastor lock him up. We're going to need more jails for the pastors in Alberta during COVID, speaking about religious persecution worldwide, unless he was speaking, like giving a how-to seminar. I think now he has either been dropped off the conference or the conference has been canceled altogether because I sort of made a bit of a stink about it online. I don't think Garnet is speaking at it anymore, which is okay. And you know what? I know that Garnet accepted the invitation to speak because he cares deeply about these issues. He really does. And I don't fault him for that. But Jason Kenney should not have been invited to that whatsoever. Anyway, I was going to go and just maybe sit there with some of my friends from Grace Life Church who had their pastor arrested for 35 days and held in solitary confinement. And then when that wasn't good enough, the government took their church for 90 days. Fenced it off like a crime scene and then put 24-hour security there for 90 days, drove them underground. Or maybe I would go with my friends from Church in the Vine who got an $80,000 regulatory fine. However, I think it might have been canceled. I will still maybe take a mosey past on March 2nd just to see if maybe their little conference was driven underground like the congregation at Grace Life. We'll see. But just the gall, the absolute gall of Jason Kenney, whatever reputation he had about caring about religious persecution. And before he started persecuting people, he was one of Canada's leading advocates for persecuted religious communities, not just in Canada, but around the world. But he torched all that. He burned it all down because when the rubber met the road, it was all talk. It was all talk. He didn't truly believe those things. He said those things. But when he got the opportunity to practice those things, he went completely the other way. He failed. He failed. He is a failure on religious persecution completely. Okay, next one. Maminka gives us $15 and says, thanks, Sheila. I think that's when I was thanking you guys for giving me the opportunity to do this job for 8.5 years and supporting our little company that could for the last 9 years with your donations and your support and your sharing and your just cheering for us to live on another day. Yuda Bursey, I knew it. Yuda is a frequent contributor here at the live stream, and I never know how to say the name. Is it Yuda or is it Judah? I was leaning toward Yuda, and I said, let me know in the chat, and it is silent. So thank you. I'm sorry you had to pay $10 to make sure I pronounce your name right, but I promise it will go to good use. And Jack, Gmail, holy smokes, $50. Thank you, Sheila. Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. You know, we rely on your support. There's no us without you. So, while we have done a lot of good things in the last 9 years, none of it would have been possible without our viewers at home. And it's been an incredible opportunity for me to work somewhere where I feel like I'm actually making a difference every day. You know, we tell the news, but sometimes we get involved and try to make things better. And that's because of you. I get the thanks from the people we help, but it's really not me. It's you guys. We've got a couple of chats from today. Maybe we want to get to those before we carry on. Oh, the show is almost half over. I better speed this up. Today's chat. Nana Awake gives us $10. So the purveyors of sexual materials in school now want to protect your kids on the internet. Yes, exactly. 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 MR Alien 177 gives us $5. Do I see a chat there? No. Okay. Well, thanks for that. If you do have a chat that didn't get attached to that, maybe just let us know in the live chat. Okay, let's go back to what we were working on already. Let's talk about Lynx Airlines. And then I definitely want to get into what happened in Westlock, Alberta, because what a victory, what a defeat for the progressive left in this province. Should worry the NDP. But let's get into the airlines. Lynx Air. Lynx Air, it was an affordable, low-cost airline. And I say was because it is no more. So Lynx is shuttering up shop. And we saw a very recent contraction in the industry in low-cost airlines. I think it was Swoop that was bought by Flair. So they were competitors and then they were struggling. COVID coupled with carbon taxes got them. And Lynx says pretty much the same thing. They say tremendous work was put into the launch, growth, and expansion of Lynx Air over the past 2 years, offering a low-cost, seamless travel experience for Canadians. And it is true. It wasn't like flying on Air Canada. If you needed to go somewhere and you didn't have any real luggage, it was quick. And it was a place for people who, you know, if you didn't care about luxury or in-flight service or any of that, you just wanted to get from point A to point B, Lynx was awesome. It was awesome for that. But apparently the Liberals only want rich people to fly. Let's go back to this. Did you lose my audio? Okay, you guys lost my audio for a little bit there and panicked both myself and Olivia. Anyway, the compounding financial pressures associated with inflation, fuel costs, exchange rates, cost of capital, regulatory costs, competitive tension in the Canadian market have ultimately proven too steep a mountain for our organization to overcome. It is with a heavy heart that we announce Lynx Air's departure from the skies. We hope in our absence that our vision to inspire more Canadians to fly leaves its mark on our passengers. So if you were paying attention there, and I think you were because you're watching the show, they list just problems with the government. Compounding financial pressures associated with inflation, that's driven by the government, fuel costs driven by the government, exchange rates, that has to do with the nature of our economy, cost of capital, regulatory costs, that's a government problem. And then, of course, the things that every business has to deal with, and that's competitive tension. You know, some people survive, some people don't, but Lynx could have survived if not for the Liberal government pricing them out of the skies. And, you know, we've got Pablo Rodriguez, the Liberal transportation minister. He says, he issued a statement on Lynx Air. I'm closely following Lynx Air's announcement that they're filing for restructuring under the company's creditors agreement. They're expected to cease operations this coming Sunday. He says he's thinking, great, thanks for the thoughts, thinking of all the Canadian travelers and workers affected by this news. Their families and the communities across Canada will feel the impact of this. For any travelers that had a return flight booked with Lynx, I expect Lynx to help you get back home as soon as possible. I expect Lynx to fully refund if your fare won't be honored. My office has been in touch with Lynx, and we will continue to communicate with all parties, and we've convened calls with other airlines to see how they can help to ensure that passengers are put first. He killed them. He doesn't even remotely admit his responsibility in the fact that I bet you maybe 1,000 people are being laid off, at least a few hundred. Passengers are being stranded. Communities are being cut off. And as a low-cost airline, basically because of how the government has just continued to tinker and tinker and tinker in the airline industry, and then add those escalating costs of the fuel, like fuel costs and the carbon tax, they just basically priced lower income travelers right out of the market. Only rich people can fly in this country if the Liberals have their way. But isn't that what the carbon tax was designed to do, right? Isn't that what they said the carbon tax was designed to do? It was designed to make certain things more expensive so we change our behavior. Now, the behavior being changed here is that people don't get to go to work if you work at Lynx Air, and people from lower socioeconomic status than Pablo Rodriguez, they don't get to fly. So I guess he changed their behavior, didn't they? This is what the carbon tax is designed to do. They want us to travel less. Well, great. Fewer airlines, higher prices. We're going to travel less. It's working perfectly, isn't it, Pablo? Don't be shocked when the things you've planned to do to Canadians actually happen. Okay. And also on the travel front, I think people are going to jail eventually with this Arrive scandal. Contractors could be forced to repay their overbilled sums. If you are not watching the Arrive scam hearings on this app that they forced everybody traveling back home to download, you are missing out. The amount of corruption being uncovered, the fact that only 2 people who ever got in trouble in all of this were the 2 whistleblowers who received threats, who got shuffled out of the CBSA, and one of them ended up at Health Canada. It's just absolutely crazy. Of course, the mainstream media isn't covering it the way they should, and I think people are going to eventually go to jail. I think this is going to be sponsorship scandal levels of corruption. However, I don't think we're going to see the real bottom of this until the Liberals are removed from power. So the app cost Canadians approximately $60 million after it was initially pegged at $80,000. I don't know if we have that Michael Barrett. Yeah, Michael Barrett. Can we go to that? I retweeted it this morning on my Twitter account. Michael Barrett is talking at committee to the 2 whistleblowers in the, not this one, not the one in there. It's the one, they're sitting in committee. It's in my Twitter account. You might have to scroll down a little bit. Might be directly on Michael Barrett's Twitter account, X account, whatever. The 2 whistleblowers are saying, we told people what was going on and we got in trouble. They named names. They name names in here. And like nobody actually seems to care about any of it. This is a massive, epic scandal. And if this happened during the Arrive Can fiasco, yeah, it's this one. Arrive Can officials testified that there was it was a coordinated effort and a coordinated attempt by the Trudeau government to cover things up. These are the whistleblowers. And they say, we tried, we got in trouble. Let's just if we can show that, I mean, if you're not watching this stuff, you're missing out.
Do you know of anyone? Can you assert? And if you can assert that anyone has deleted records, I just need the name.
Yeah.
I'm very short on time. Just a name.
Mindone has deleted emails, and we did not have our accounts locked down until after we testified, and we are very concerned that our emails have been deleted because they won't give us records of who's accessed our emails.
So would you say this is a cover-up?
I believe there's the potential for it, and all we've been trying
Why?
to do is
Why-
seek
why-
justice
why-
and fairness and
Why
transparency.
do you think that there's a cover-up?
It's a great question, and we want to know as well. And we've been asking for information and
If
disclosure.
we have the time, I told you guys about Mindone threatening me, and nobody did anything. Kelly Belanger was nowhere to be found in the OAG, keeps on saying that there was a lack of project management. Her husband was convicted of sexually assaulting young girls, got convicted and went to jail, and she wasn't around. I had been asked, and Mr. Utano had been asked to help her out while she was gone for family problems. Erin O'Gorman didn't do anything when she found out that I was threatened. Mr. Doan had threatened somebody else and been docked pay, so she knew there was a pattern of this behavior. Like, when we talk about why there would be a reason or a separation, I never had any problems when I was at the CBSA. I got asked to go to Health Canada because of my record at the CBSA and my record previous to it. So I don't know. Neither does Mr. Utano, who had a spotless record. We're just trying to get the right information. We're trying to have transparency. And now, after everything that's happened, we want independence from what the CBSA has done.
Because you don't trust the Trudeau government to review their own scandal.
Isn't that wild? They think that their own records have been deleted, these whistleblowers. They were bullied, threatened. They're naming names about people involved in the cover-up. The story there about that somebody's husband involved in, sex crimes in the middle of it all. This is a huge scandal, huge. The Liberals have attempted to cover up a multi-million-dollar scandal. And these two guys were doing their best to bring it to the public, and they were bullied, threatened, silenced, and they think their records were deleted. It's insane. Multiple people need to go to jail here. Multiple. Let's hit an ad break, and then we'll go into Alberta stuff, if we could.
Justin Trudeau's new censorship law, Bill C-18, it's a shakedown and a desperate attempt to keep the mainstream media afloat. Many have already lost their ability to access our Facebook and Instagram pages. The blackout will soon affect every user in Canada. We've partnered with Private Internet Access, a VPN provider dedicated to safeguarding digital privacy. For just $2 a month, you can maintain your access to our content across all your devices at piavpn.com/rebelnews.
Okay, let's go into some Alberta stuff. It was an exciting night here in Alberta last night because the Liberals and the NDP attempted to colonize a small town farming community north of Edmonton with their bad progressive ideas. Janice Irwin, NDP MLA from Edmonton. I'm looking at you. Randy Boissonneau, soon to be former Liberal MP from Edmonton, also looking at you. So the town of Westlock. Quite a story unfolded there. The news broke late November that they were going to take their rainbow crosswalk fiasco to like a townwide plebiscite. They were going to put it directly to the people because the people did not trust the politicians and the politicians did not trust the people. So over the summer, for some reason, this town that has a tractor museum in it, and a couple of nearby Hutterite colonies, and I think the world's largest harvest. All of a sudden, this became ground zero of the fight for the use of public infrastructure to promote gender ideology. They insisted on having a rainbow pride flag, trans flag, progress flag sidewalk. You know what, if you can flip a town like Westlock, they can flip anywhere. So the town is like under 5,000 people, by the way. The decision to allow a vote came on the heels of a citizen-led petition submitted to the town of Westlock on October 30th. The petition calls for bylaw 2023-14, which would restrict the town to flying flags representative of only the municipal, provincial, or federal governments. Fair enough. What they wanted was neutrality. They didn't want to use infrastructure that they all pay for to push a certain agenda, i.e. no pro-life flags, no pride flags. Fair enough, right? The petition also calls for regulation to paint crosswalks only in traditional white laddered patterns. So again, no favoritism, no politics on the infrastructure. During the council meeting on November 22nd, the crosswalk and flagpole bylaw unanimously passed its first reading before councillors opted to put the decision to locals instead. The uproar over the rainbow crosswalk in the rural farming community comes after a unanimous town council decision to allow students and staff at RF Staples School's LGBTQ Thunder Alliance to paint the town of Westlock's first rainbow crosswalk on June 18th. It's right across from the Legion of all places. It instantly divided the town. People were furious. Liberal MP from Edmonton was brought in, Randy Boissonnaud, to argue in favor of the crosswalk after locals turned up at a June 12th council meeting to object to the sidewalk revamp. And then the NDP started sending in their colonizers too. And wouldn't you know it, plebiscite last night, the people have spoken, and there will be no political use of public infrastructure in the town of Westlock. So the NDP can, and the Liberals, by the way, they can go back to ruining Edmonton with their bad ideas and quit colonizing rural Alberta and our culture with their nonsense. So it was close because the progressives really brought out all the stops. And frankly, it necessitates, like, their behavior in all of this necessitates the reason for a neutrality bylaw, because the town councillors were going around knocking doors on behalf of being allowed to use town infrastructure for political reasons. They should have remained neutral in this. They're the council. They should have let the two sides, the pro sidewalk people and the anti sidewalk people, fight it out. And the town council should have kept their hands out of it, right? Instead, they were not. So I hope they all get unelected next time around. Slate of conservatives up there in Westlock next time. It was really close. It was a vote of 663 to 639. And of course, the NDP are singing the blues over this. Janice Irwin says that Westlock has banned pride flags and rainbow crosswalks. They didn't ban that. They banned anything but the apolitical use of public infrastructure. It's not like they're playing favorites here. To Westlock's 2SLGBTQ plus community, you think that's a robust community? Anyway, I'm so sorry. You may feel alone, but know that many of us stand with you. The fight for safe, inclusive Alberta continues. We can't back down. We won't. Janice, go back to ruining Edmonton. But what, you had no business there anyway. Nothing. Go back to yelling at street preachers in downtown Edmonton the way she likes to do. Go do that. Leave these people alone. They've decided they don't want this stuff on their crosswalk. By the way, they pay for the crosswalk, Janice, not you, Randy. They get a say. You don't. Get out of town. Like, this is the worst. It's exactly what Ottawa does to Alberta. Now we got Edmonton doing it to small town Alberta. I'm so happy they lost. It's not enough to teach them a lesson, though, to mind their own business. All right, let's continue on the NDP being absolutely ridiculous beat here in Alberta, and they will continue to be loud and obnoxious because they're running a leadership race. And speaking of loud and obnoxious, or as she calls herself, not her words, not mine, fat and sassy leadership candidate, Sarah Hoffman, former health minister, I say without comment. She will not rest until no baby is safe, as my friend Adam So said. She's got this tweet here. She says that when she was Minister of Health, she's bragging here, and I'll tell you a little bit of backstory here after I go through her tweet. As Minister of Health, she changed the law to stop harassment near abortion clinics, and she made sure that she was the first province to fully fund the abortion pill. I'm so proud of our record, but our work is not finished. I won't stop until we get the job done. Okay. What she's talking about is the bubble zone legislation that they brought in around abortion clinics in Alberta, and it was a solution without a problem. What it did was it limited protest within a certain couple hundred meters, I think, near an abortion clinic, but literally nobody was protesting near an abortion clinic. Nobody. In fact, at the time when the NDP made the law, and they made a little promotional video to interviewing abortion workers to talk about the law, they didn't show any instances of harassment. They saw people coming and going from the clinic unmolested by, I guess, crazy pro-lifers like me. What had been happening near abortion clinics, and so infrequently that the NDP, in all their efforts to push this legislation, couldn't actually capture it on film happening, is that sometimes across the street, in the field across the street, you might have a couple of nuns, elderly sometimes, standing there silently praying the rosary. And that was a bridge too far for Sarah Hoffman. It made her uncomfortable to have somebody praying for those women and their soon-to-be killed babies. It was too much for her to know that people were silently praying across the street very infrequently. And so she had to ban that. And it was a restriction on free speech, but also free thought. Like, you couldn't even pray the rosary in your head across the street. What kind of Temple Mount nonsense is this? Like, if you've ever been to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, you also cannot silently pray up there. And it's, I think, a great human right violation. But that's what Sarah Hoffman did, and she's bragging about it. She's bragging that she restricted the free speech of Albertans in and around the Church of Women's Reproductive Rights. You could not blaspheme near her church. Draw your own conclusions about someone who thinks that praying nearby is a great offense. Just draw your conclusions about what may be happening in the soul of that individual. I know I have. Lastly, on the Alberta beat, we've got Danielle Smith. This week was her State of the Province address. We are headed into budget territory early next week. And so she sat down, and it was like an 8-minute address about what she plans to do in the budget without giving any specific details. But one of the things that she wants to do, which has been sort of neglected by previous governments, but notably the horrific NDP government that I just spoke about, is that she wants to top up the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. So in Alberta, we have this, it's not a rainy day fund. It's a trust fund that is there if there's like a catastrophic collapse in oil or something like that. And she wants to grow the strategic fund to between 250 billion and 400 billion by 2050. And so she wants to be putting budgetary surpluses in this. She said in her 8-minute televised speech, the need for more fiscal restraint than previously anticipated, citing lower resource revenues and volatile oil and gas prices, Smith said. Thankfully, we had a good year and will collect enough resource revenues to cover that $16 billion, with a few billion left over to pay towards our provincial debt and savings for the future. That said, we simply cannot rely on 16 billion or more in resource revenues to balance our budget year in and year out. So Smith is saying that this incredible opportunity to have this huge resource fund, sort of like what Norway has, but Norway doesn't have to pay for the rest of Europe, like Alberta has to pay for the rest of the country. sometimes it feels like. She says we're going to focus on building that. So paying down the debt, building the Heritage Savings Trust Fund, and tightening our belts, because we have an enormous public sector, and a lot of public spending here in Alberta are higher than Saskatchewan. We spend more in healthcare than BC, and I don't think we're getting anything more in return. So they're looking at revamping that. I saw that they're already putting the fear of God into Alberta Health Services managers. Either you're going to get with the program or you're going to get gone, which warms the cockles of my heart. So we'll see. I think this is a great thing. I think this is wonderful, and it's about darn time. Let's go into this last thing. Maybe we'll have time for a couple more things. I'm just trying to look to see if we have some. No, we don't have any chat. So let's go into this story that I don't think is getting enough interest, especially if you live in Edmonton, because we've already experienced this. So there is a warning about Hamas-inspired terrorism for the potential for it to take place in Canada. So this is a government threat report. So the Stuart Bell, he's really good on this file over at Global News. This is a government-issued threat report. Said the government's terrorist threat assessment agency. These are remember last week when they're like, actually, parents' rights protesters, you guys should be on a CSIS watch list. Well, this is the grown-ups saying something different. The Terrorist Threat Assessment Agency is warning that extremists motivated by the Israel-Hamas conflict could attack crowds at events in Canada. In a series of strategic intelligence briefs issued in the wake of the October 7th Hamas attack in Israel, the analysts cautioned against about mass violence spilling into this country. The Integrated Terrorist Assessment Center, or ITAC, predicted attacks could target protests, cultural centers. We already see these people protesting Jewish hospitals, diplomatic posts, and other symbols of Israeli or Palestinian interests in Canada. Such an attack could be, oh, wow. These guys don't have a crystal ball, they have a crystal mind. Such an attack could be carried out by a radicalized lone actor using readily available weapons, ITAC wrote in the briefs circulated last October and released to Global News. It is possible that ideologically and religiously motivated violent extremists and lone actors may be triggered by events and mobilize to violence and conduct a mass casualty attack on large gatherings, ITAC wrote in a brief on the Canadian implications of the conflict. So, at the same time, the Liberals won't shut up about Islamophobia. And the Liberals want parents' rights protesters, people who are skeptical of the boy tackling your daughter at the rugby field or stealing your daughter's scholarship to a university to play on the volleyball team. Those people, according to the Liberals, should be on a CSIS watch list, and your ability to speak freely about it should be censored on the internet through the online harms bill because you're harming people. But the grown-ups in the room are saying we need to be really concerned about large gatherings in this country and Jewish-run cultural centers, events, businesses, because they could be targets of religiously motivated violence. I bet you Canada today is going to be extra secure this year. Remember, the truckers committed honking violence. And if you are in Edmonton, this has already happened, right? Somebody shot up the city hall and he had a pro-Hamas type manifesto. And so this has already happened. They said it would happen, and now it has. And yet they continue to have the Hamas-led protests, or at least the Hamas apologist protests down at City Hall every single week. Every single week. It's my worry that this country is far more dangerous because we don't take these sorts of, This is a jihad-like terror attack in Canada that no one seems to know about. Well, and it's also because YouTube pulled down any videos that people had been able to capture of his manifesto rant in his vehicle. That is footage from City Hall. Nobody is talking about it whatsoever because I guess the wrong side committed the terror attack. And couple what we see here and these threat assessment warnings from ITAC. Now, couple that with the fact that we are taking in refugees from Gaza who, like 3/4 of them, express support for Hamas. And the support for Hamas has gone up in the Palestinian-controlled territories since the October 7th terror attack that left 1,200 dead and 240 people kidnapped, where sexualized violence and butchery and murdering of children and kidnapping of children reigned supreme, where they live streamed it, where they wore body camera images so that people could see the violence. Since that terror attack, the support for Hamas has gone up in the Palestinian-controlled territories. I spoke to an MP, I won't say which one, the other day, and he had seen the video that had been compiled by the IDF of what they had retrieved from the body-worn cameras of the Hamas terrorists who committed the October 7th terror attack. And he said it was, and he's a former member of the military, and he said it was like the worst thing that he had ever seen in his life. And he said the most chilling part was not the gruesome images, although they were horrible and will stay with him forever. It was the guy who called his mom in the middle of it to brag about how many Jews he had killed that day. And he said, like the MP said to me, this is what we are poised to bring in to this country, because there's no possible way we could vet out the 3/4 and only take the, I guess, the anti-terrorism ones. There's no possible way. I mean, there's a reason why Egypt has closed the border with Gaza and has made sure that their border goes deep into the ground so that nobody can tunnel underneath it. And yet Canada is pursuing this suicidal, I would suggest, desire to be virtue signaling at all costs. Do we have any more chats left, Olivia? Okay. Olivia, I'll let you. Oh, you know what? Let's go to this one last thing, just because maybe we'll have time for 2 more. Let's show David Menzies' excellent question to Pierre Poilievre. David Menzies and Rebel News and the Conservative Party of Canada, I think our relationship is healing. Nature is healing under a new leader, Pierre Poilievre, in that we just want to be treated fairly. And so far they are. We show up, we ask good questions, they give good answers. What an incredible opportunity for everybody involved. Pierre Poilievre is seizing upon that, and so are we. Please show David Menzies' question heard around the world.
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. David Menzies with Rebel News. Mr. Poilievre, for the last few years, our news organization has been covering what can only be described as a war on women. Biological males are pretending to be females, and these men are invading female safe spaces. This includes female sports ranging from volleyball to rugby. As well, men pretending to be women are gaining access to female shelters and even female prisons. This has collectively led to real women and girls being emotionally abused, physically injured, and my question, sir, is should you form the next federal government, will you make female safe spaces safe again by introducing legislation that bans so-called transgender women from participating in female sports and getting access into female shelters and female prisons?
Female spaces should be exclusively for females, not for biological males. You ask if I introduce legislation on that. A lot of the spaces you described are provincially and municipally controlled. So it is unclear what federal legislation what reach federal legislation would have to change them. But obviously, female sports, female change rooms, female bathrooms should be for females, not for biological males.
Great answer, great question. And yet it has made everybody very angry on the other side of this. The mediocre men who want to take over what it means to be a woman and define what it means to be a woman. They would call me a bad woman. Depends on the day, I guess. I might even call myself that, but I'm sure as heck not taking that from the likes of, let's say, Faye Johnstone, who of the YWCA, who was on the Hershey's campaign for Women's Day, I think it was. I don't pay attention. I don't know if it's International Women's Day or Women's Week. I don't know. I don't care. But he was featured on the chocolate bar, and then everybody mocked Hershey's, and then the Daily Wire made Jeremy's chocolate and in response. And Faye Johnston was the keynote speaker at the YWCA's Women of Distinction Awards. He is a biological male who has nothing but hate in his heart for me. And he's frequently quoted in the mainstream media and by politicians as an expert in I don't know, transgender issues, and that might be true. But next time the media and the politicians quote him, as is the case with Andre Picard, who fancies himself to be a health journalist, maybe somebody could note that Faye Johnstone's Wisdom to Action organization is the recipient of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in Justin Trudeau's government's money to push these agendas. Faye Johnstone's entire livelihood is based on whether or not the Liberals are in power, allowing men to pretend to be women. And he doesn't want the gravy train with biscuit wheels to roll out of town and leave him behind. And so just anytime you see a politician or a so-called health journalist who, by the way, Andre Picard advocated for complete and total segregation of the unvaccinated, some health journalist. But anytime they trot out Faye Johnstone or the likes of him, just remember, they are completely funded by the Liberal government. And so they are going to fight like hell because their bank accounts depend on it, right? Like at the end of the day, it's quite cynical. Oh, we're over time. All right, maybe we can go out after I wrap everything up on Doug Ford's mockery of Bonnie Henry, saying that Bonnie Crombie, wrong bad Bonnie, Bonnie Crombie. She's the Ontario Liberal leader. I think she used to be the mayor of, is it Mississauga? I think it was Mississauga. She's the queen of the carbon tax after she refused to say whether or not she supports the policy. It's a simple question. She needs to answer it. Maybe Ford could take up the carbon tax with his buddy Justin Trudeau, because those two seem pretty chummy. So while fair enough, Doug Ford is taking shots at Bonnie Crombie and she deserves them, but he has the ear of Justin Trudeau. They seem pretty chummy every time Justin Trudeau's in town to dump some money on a electric vehicle battery plant in Ontario. Maybe he could raise the issue of the carbon tax and the inflationary problems it's causing with him then. But anyway, we'll show that video on the way out. Thanks everybody for tuning into the show today. I'll see everybody back next week. Hopefully it'll be me. I think my travel schedule has sort of calmed down a little bit. Thanks to everybody who regularly watches the show, shares the show, introduces new people to the show, engages in the live chat, and everybody who works behind the scenes at Rebel News to make sure the show is there for you when you want to watch it. whenever you want to click on it. And special thanks to everybody who donates their hard-earned money to keep the lights on here at Rebel News, not just on this show, but anytime you pitch in to help us out. We do appreciate it. We know that Justin Trudeau is leaving less of your money in your pocket every single day. And so I'm just so grateful that you choose to support us. And as David Menzies always says, stay sane.
After you called Bonnie Crombie the queen of carbon tax, she countered saying that this is all a political stunt and that they're only afraid of losing the elections for her. So are you afraid of Bonnie Crombie?
No, not at all. I just need to know, is she for the carbon tax or against the carbon tax? You know, she was the queen of the carbon tax when she was in Ottawa. And it's proven when the energy costs go up, when gas goes up, inflation goes up. And it's been proven over and over again. And thank goodness we saw right now, we reduced 10.7 cents per liter off the gas pump. So that puts money back into people's pockets. We've also got rid of the tolls at the 412 and 418. The one fare is $1,600. So we just believe in a different methodology. Put money back in people's pockets. They're going to go out and do things they might otherwise not be able to do. Go for dinner, buy something, maybe put a little addition or renovation in their home. And that's what we believe in. But she has to come clean. The media asked her 10 times yesterday, are you for or against it? It's very simple. Either taking money out of people's pockets by the worst tax I've ever seen, or are you willing